Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Songwriting Simplified with me, Jonny Lipsham, right here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk, here in Scotland, the capital of all known things and unknown things in the entire universe and any other multiverses that there might be. There we go. Thank you, Rock, for that kind of idea. I just kind of spitballed off of that one. But thank you for that. I appreciate it. All right. So tonight we are talking all things songwriting, composing, arranging, and music theory and all of that fun stuff. And of course, using Studio One and Notion in that context. So I'm pretty sure that tonight is already going to be pretty cool, because we have already got a kind of subject for this evening, which is improvising as a form of composing, which basically that question comes from Ron Figura, basically, and he's correct that improvising is essentially, it is already a form of composing. It's spontaneous composition. It's composing in the moment. So we can certainly talk. I have something in my eye. Sorry, folks. I was going to carry on, but this is actually really annoying me. So we can talk about approaches to improvisation so that you can make your improvisation much more about telling a story and conveying a musical subject, conveying a set of ideas that make sense to the listener, rather than just being fireworks and chops and displays of technique, which is quite often what we can end up with. We can quite often end up with, when we're improvising, we're just blazing up and down the fretboard, fingerboard, the keys of the saxophone, the valves on a trumpet or a flugelhorn, or on the strings of a fretless bass, or whatever your instrument of choice is, or even with your voice. You can end up with just a bunch of sounds that show that you are extremely dexterous and skillful on your instrument, and that you've reached a very high level of proficiency on your instrument, but it doesn't really say anything. It doesn't really express anything musical that you can really latch onto. It doesn't have musical ideas that you can really latch onto. One of my favorite drummers, actually, is Todd Schuckerman. He plays with a band called Styx, and he is a phenomenal drummer because he plays traditional grip with a rock band. He has amazing chops and amazing technique, which for most of the concerts with Styx, you rarely see displayed, because it's not stylistically appropriate for him to show off all of his chops. But one of the things he does do is he does drum solos where they are composed. So he starts with an idea, a theme, a set of rhythms and sounds on his drum set, which he then develops and takes through several different permutations over the course of 5-10 minutes, and then he comes back to those initial ideas, and he plays those initial ideas again to kind of give the improvisation some kind of bookends. Benny Greb, another really fantastic drummer, did an entire video kind of talking about music as a language, and talking about the importance of, when we say something good and we say something profound with our instrument or even with our speech, it does well for us if we repeat that. If we state something, it is worth saying it again. Repetition is really, really important, especially in music and especially in speech, because it helps you drive your point home. If you say something once, it can easily get lost by the listener. You know, the listener, I mean, people, we tend to, there are two things that we do. We either hear or we listen. And there's a difference between the two. Listening can be passive. Listening can be where you just hear something in the ether and, you know, you don't really pay it a lot of attention, even when you should. Or you can hear, and this is a different kind of listening. Hearing is attentive. It's where you take in what is being said and you ingest it and you think deeply upon what you've heard. And most of the time, when I'm talking with my wife, I intend to hear every word she says when we're in conversation, but quite often I end up only listening. I don't take in 100% of what she's saying. So one of the things that I try to do to help develop that skill with my wife, so that our communication is always at a good high level and a good level where she feels like things that she says to me are valued and that therefore she is valued, is I repeat things that she has said to me. So if she says something about a particular subject, when she's finished saying that, I will then repeat back to her, either word for word, because it's one of the things I can do, or I will summarize what she has said and say that back to her and then say, have I understood this correctly? And she'll either confirm or deny whether I've understood that correctly. But it helps us to engage in conversation where she feels that what I'm saying to her has value and that I've actually paid attention to it. So it's something I'm working on. And so it is also something I have decided that this is something I need to work on with music, and particularly with paying attention to people who improvise. So Ron has chosen an excellent subject for tonight. So I thank you, Ron, very much for your choice of subject. So let's go see who's here. And I can tell you already who was first in the door, because pretty much as soon as I created the live stream for tonight, as soon as I set it up in YouTube, within, I would say, maybe 3 or 4 seconds in the chat, guess who appeared? Yes, my friends, it was Billy. Billy appeared in the chat, and he had shared the link to this show in about 4 or 5 places within about 15 seconds. So Billy is a phenomenon all of his own. And Chris Manrakna says crap second again. And so they're having a very, very amusing discussion there. So Christopher is second. Ron Figura is also here. Stephen Wilson is here. Kyle Trajuziak is here. Paul Morgan is here. Rock T says greetings. And we also have Rich Cresswell here as well, who is saying shalom. Shalom to you too, my friend. Shalom Shavrim, in fact. And we got Alfredo Huerta, and we got Tony Stringer, and we've got Brett Marla. And we've got Kevin from Kevin's Guitar Stories, and we've got John Lake as well. And we've got Bobby Booth, and we've got Dave from Bob's NY. Thank you very much. And he says, what's that? Cudulations. I love it. Cudulations. That is a good word. That is a good word. I like that. He says, Luke has been working with me on reconfiguring my 32 board to communicate with version 6.5. We'll click the like button, but going to be messing with the board. No problem, mate. I'm glad you're working with Luke. Luke is a ledge, and he will definitely have you sorted out, because he's a genius when it comes to Studio Live mixers. Let's see. Alfredo says, I'm here to see if this is a useful thing to watch and participate in. Okay, Alfredo, I think that's kind of a wee bit of a challenge, and that's okay. I like challenges. So, if you've got a question about songwriting or composing or arranging or music theory that you would like answered, this is the place to ask it. I have 2 degrees. I have an undergraduate degree from Middlesex University in music composition. I also have a postgraduate degree in music education where I specialized in musicology, and I have taught high school, I have taught adult education, I have taught up to degree level as a music educator professionally. So I have proper professional music education credentials. I work for Presonus. I've been doing that for 4 years. I love my job at Presonus, and I love the company, and obviously love Presonus products as well. So yes, you are in the right place. So if you have questions, get them in the chat. And I appreciate your subscription as well. And we got Gardner99 here. We got Paul Morgan. And we got Don Oliver as well. Who says, I've been completely shut down from Studio One Plus. I've got 3 support tickets and something to do with my credit card, which I've submitted 3 times. Still not working. Any suggestions? If it's to do with your credit card, then working with our sales team is going to be the way to go. I know that sounds like I'm pushing you off, because really I don't know anything about the sales systems for Studio One Plus, and I'm really sorry that you're having this problem. I'm really sorry that you are shut out from Studio One Plus. I hope that our sales team will work with you and be able to get it sorted out for you as soon as possible. Just on that point, the Presonus sales team are freaking awesome. They are some of the best people I work with. The inside sales team is led by my friend Camille, who is awesome. She is a legend, and she is fantastic at leading that team. And of course, all of sales at Presonus is overseen by Rick Nakvi. So you are in the best hands in the business. I can assure you of that. And hopefully we'll get you up and running very, very soon. If you'd like to, Don, if you are on Facebook, please drop me a message, a private message, and with your ticket number or one of your ticket numbers. And I'll go and take a wee look tomorrow and see what's going down, and see kind of what progress is being made, and I'll try and stay on top of it with you as well. So thanks for that, Don, and hopefully we'll get you going as soon as possible. Alfredo says, I don't play any instrument and I don't know nothing about music, 0 training. However, I compose songs by ear, creating chords by using notes that sound good together to me. Pretty successful so far. You know what? That's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. You don't have to have multiple degrees like I do. I only did that because I didn't have any friends, and I'm a bit of a nerd, and I like taking things. I like taking music apart and seeing how things work, and putting it together again. You know, some people like to do that with a car. They like to take a car engine apart and figure out how all these pieces interact together to make the engine work and to make the car work at its optimum level. I like to do that with music. I like to take music apart and kind of analyze it, study it, work out how it has all developed over the centuries and millennia to get where we are today, and optimize how I get better at making music from studying music, from studying the works of great composers, studying the works of great improvisers, studying great musicians and how they make music on their instruments, that kind of thing, and studying the works of great composers like Mozart, Beethoven, Shostakovich, Tchaikovsky, John Williams, Hans Zimmer, James Horner, great composers like that. John Williams is like one of the pinnacle figures of modern film composing. So if you want to study composition, studying his works is like, that's the apex. And of course, Gustav Holst. But I also like, jazz music. I grew up on jazz music, so I grew up listening to Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, John Coltrane, Miles Davis, and more modern jazz music like Weather Report, like Michael Brecker and his brother Randy when they formed the Brecker Brothers Band, and of course Tower of Power and Parliament Funkadelic and all of that funk music from the 70s. I grew up on all of that. So, you know, I am pretty broad with music, really. But yeah, so yeah, this is the right place for you. So who else do we have here? Brett Marlowe is here. John Barry, yes. John Barry is awesome because he writes some of the best, some of the most iconic film theme tunes. Among them being James Bond, and things like that. Peter Brooks is here as well. He says, I saw you on Crewe railway station. I find that exceedingly unlikely. I have not been anywhere near Crewe railway station since about 1979. So that is highly unlikely that you saw me on Crewe railway station. But it's possible that I have a stunt double who was at Crewe railway station. But okay. And let's see, I think I got down to the bottom. All right, so improvisation as composing, as a compositional form. How does this work? Because improvisation is spontaneous. It's composition in the moment. It's music made now, not kind of sit and thought out. So how do you kind of use compositional elements and compositional skills to make music in the moment rather than something that is planned and pre-prepared and thought out over a period of, you know, several months or even several years. Some compositional works have, you know, can take, you know, 5 or 10 years to actually complete, or, you know, a matter of a few months. But improvisation is taking that process and making it immediate. And then you either record that at a recording session or it's performed in the moment in a jazz club or on a stage at an arena, and that moment is never heard again. And that's the part that I love the most about improvisation, is where it's not recorded. It's not captured for posterity. It's done in the moment. It's a moment that you share uniquely with your audience. And it's a moment that you have together that you and they will never experience again. And that music is special. It's more precious than any other music and any other art form in the world, as far as I'm concerned, because it's a uniquely intimate moment between the performer and the audience, and you communicate with your audience on a level that you will never communicate with them again. And you get to say something to that audience that you will never say again. And from an audience perspective, listening to great improvisers, you know, oftentimes those improvisations are burned into my memory and burned into my heart to the point where, you know, I can still recall those improvisations many, many years later because they have profoundly emotionally affected me. And when you're improvising, you have the ability to do that, to emotionally affect a listener in a way that listening to a recorded work, a recorded compositional work, I mean, you know, those kind of works, yes, they will still have that profound effect, but you can listen to them over and over again. You can study the score over and over again. But with an improvisation, it's a unique moment. And, you know, I think that can have an even more profound effect upon a listener than, a carefully through-composed or strophic composition written down for musicians to perform can be. Because, you know, that's something you can perform this work again and again and again and again in front of different audiences night after night after night. And so, yes, you can still profoundly emotionally affect an audience, but when you're improvising, that moment is gone after that, after the improvisation is over. And that's my favorite part of improvising. So, do visitors to this channel share links to music they have composed? Not generally, because on YouTube, sharing links is only possible if you are a moderator of the channel or a manager of the channel. So I have a team of moderators that basically keep everything working smoothly and making sure that people get answers to questions, and they point me in the right direction if I miss something. And you'll know who they are because they've got the wrench next to their name. Their names are in kind of a blue-purple kind of color. But Alfredo, please do type in to your reply what your web address is. You won't be able to do a link to your web address, but certainly if you've got a website, certainly do, suggest what that is. And I'm sure we'd all be interested in taking a listen. And Chris says, improvisation is great until you stumble a few notes or bars, then everyone pretends they didn't hear it. I disagree, and here is why I disagree, and this is why I think improvisation is unique. Improvisation is unique because, as far as I'm concerned, there are no wrong notes. And if you think I'm crazy, then you can talk to great musicians like Victor Wooten, the great phenomenal virtuoso bass player, because he also said this at a masterclass that he gave, and he said there are no wrong notes. And if you still think that Victor is crazy and you think I'm crazy as well, then you can ask Beethoven, because Beethoven says this too, and he said there is nothing wrong about playing a wrong note, but what is unforgivable is to play without passion. To play without emotion is worse than playing a wrong note. And here's the thing with improvisation: there are no wrong notes. There are notes that fit, and there are notes that provide tension, and some notes will provide more tension than others. Now, you might play some notes or play a chord that you don't necessarily intend to play. And this is kind of where improvisation, to me, takes on another level. Because you can have improvisation that's intentional and improvisational that's not intentional. And both are right, as far as I'm concerned. So there is, to me, there really is no such thing as a wrong note. You can find yourself maybe playing accidentally a chord change too soon, or a chord change too late, or you're playing accidentally in the wrong key. That's easy to do, especially on if you're on a guitar and you're on a fretted instrument. If you accidentally start a phrase, either a fret below or a fret above where you intend to start, the whole thing is going to be out of whack. But if you play it with intention, even if you don't mean it, if you play it with some passion, if you play it with some emotion, those wrong notes can still sound right. And there's a great story that Herbie Hancock tells, where he was working with Miles Davis, because he would have been 19, 20 years old, and a kid, and he was playing with Herbie Hancock. He was Herbie Hancock. He was playing with Miles Davis, the legend. Miles was already a legend, and Herbie was playing with him, and they were playing So What, which basically it doesn't really actually have chords. It has two modes. And as Miles was improvising, Herbie played a chord on the piano that sounded to his ears really, really wrong. He was just like, I played something that was wrong. And he put his hands up to his head like this because it was so jarringly wrong and so obviously wrong. But Miles didn't see it that way. Miles just basically saw it as a musical event that happened. And so what Miles did was he just picked out some of the notes that he heard Herbie had played in this chord and developed a melodic statement out of those notes. Miles took what Herbie perceived to be wrong and played those notes and made it fit. And so when they got to the end of the set and they went for the intermission, Herbie said to Miles, "Look, man, I goofed. I messed up. I'm really sorry. I screwed it up. I played the wrong chord." And Miles said, "No, you just played something that I wasn't expecting. And so the challenge was on me to kind of, find something from amongst what you played to make something, to respond to it musically." So Miles had this notion of it wasn't wrong at all. It was just not what I was expecting. And that was a challenge to me to respond to it in a musical way. And so they made it work. So to me, whether you're improvising in a jazz context or a pop or a rock context, or even, you're doing a cadenza in a classical context, I don't think there's anything wrong. I don't think you can play anything wrong. I think you can play stylistically inaccurately. I think you can play stylistically inappropriately. But I don't think you can play actual wrong notes, because I don't think wrong notes exist. And a lot of people are probably going to disagree with that wrong notes don't exist. But I'm convinced that wrong notes don't exist. There are notes that fit, and there are notes that fit less than notes that fit. There's consonance and there's dissonance, and that's it. So, an example would be, let me play some examples rather than just talking. So, if I play something that's entirely consonant, so let's change the sound up, shall we? All of that was entirely consonant. Okay? There were no notes in there that provide any tension at all. I mean, you could say that note there provides a little bit of tension. It's the ninth. If I resolve it, it can resolve down to the C, or it can resolve upwards to the third, to the E. Likewise, if I play this note here, that's the major seventh. That provides just a little bit more tension, a bit more spice. And I can resolve that upwards to the tonic, or I can resolve that down to the sixth there, which is kind of fairly consonant. It's not very dissonant. So that's kind of mild dissonance. That's very, very mild dissonance. Now, when we start playing notes that don't belong to the key, because this is C major, if I start introducing things like F sharps, that's very spicy, that's very dissonant, especially if I just leave it hanging. But if I resolve it like that, up to the fifth, then that's kind of, you get that contrast between dissonance and consonance. Which is what Leonard Bernstein in West Side Story was getting at with Maria. It's that tension there with the F sharp, which doesn't belong in this key, right? And it's that interval there, the augmented fourth. So that's a tension that doesn't exist. So if I was to improvise again, but and I will introduce this little F sharp every now and then. All right, so you can, I'm kind of meandering a little bit there melodically, but one of the secrets to good improvisation is developing some phrases and repeating them. So, for example, if I was to go, so I took one little idea and then I added a couple of notes to it, and then I did a little variation on it when I got to the A minor chord. Okay, so you develop an idea and then you can develop that idea, and there's different ways you can do that. So I could just go, and then I could shift it up. And then instead of going down, I could go up instead, by way of contrast. So you can incorporate those kind of ideas into your improvisation. So take an idea, if it's going down, answer that idea by going up on the next phrase. So we're talking very, very simple, bare bones basics of improvisation here. But even if you're in a blues context, and it's in a blues context where frankly a lot of people will go nuts with just playing too many notes and the music doesn't make sense. It's no longer musical. It's just, chops. Chops is great. It's going to impress other musicians, but it's not really going to impress an audience who maybe are not musicians. So if you want to communicate with people that are not musicians and have a wider audience for what you do, then chops are okay. Chops are important. Chops show that you are good on your instrument, but they need to serve the music and they need to communicate to somebody that's not a musician. So yes, you want to impress the musicians, but you want to impress the non-musicians in your audience as well. So, you know, in a kind of more all right, so you saw what I did there. I had an idea with the kind of chord vamping, and then I took an idea and then I developed that when I started moving through the chord changes. And there wasn't really a whole lot of fireworks there, but I could have done a lot more than I did. But so I think you get the idea, and I think hopefully you get the point. Which I am trying not to labor the point about making sure that what you do is musical and what you do communicates something to any listener that's in your audience, whether they have a musical brain or whether they don't have a musical brain. Because, you know, in your audience, you're going to have a diverse group. They're going to be people that are real musicians, and yes, your chops will impress them. They will be impressed by your skills on your instrument. And then you've got the other end of the spectrum where they're not musicians at all. They just like good music. You want to grab that both ends of the spectrum with your improvisations and, you know, everybody else in the middle as well. So that's the challenge of improvisation, is taking musical ideas, making some sense out of them, as well as being able to demonstrate you are really, really good at your instrument. So kind of what I was doing there, I mean, to be honest, because I don't want the speakers to feed back into the microphone, I had my volume turned down really low, so I really couldn't hear what I was playing. So hopefully it kind of made sense. So yeah, I hope that kind of helps with that. Apparently there is a Studio One meetup at Massachusetts tonight, which I think is after this show. Whether it's is that 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock? I'm not really sure. Oh, it's 8 p.m. Okay, 8 p.m. Central, so it's going to be like 2 a.m. for me. So there's basically going to be an hour's gap between this show and the Studio One meetup if you're interested in that. Let's see. I'm kind of looking through the chat here and seeing kind of what you guys are talking about. Yeah, Stephen's right. He says improvisation is spontaneous. That's correct. That's exactly right. Improvisation is spontaneous composing. It's composing on the spot. Alfredo says, I retired from being a biology professor at university about 5 years ago, so I have more free time to liberate my brain to write music. There you go. Not sure about learning music theory. Well, you know, music theory is not as complicated as it sounds. It can become incredibly complex. And basically you have to decide up to what kind of level you want to learn music theory. And for me, music theory matters. It matters for two reasons. Number one, it matters that you apply the music theory to practice, to actual music making. If you're just going to study music theory for the sake of studying musicological techniques, but never actually put those things into practice, then I personally think they serve no purpose. Now, there are people that I know personally who, you know, before going to a foreign country, for example, Germany, they will spend hours and hours and hours going through grammar books and phrase books, and they will spend hours and hours and hours studying the language, right? Lots and lots of time. They'll put in lots and lots of time in developing their vocabulary, developing their phraseology. But when it comes to the crunch and they go to Germany and they're introduced to German people for the first time, they don't want to say anything. Now, there is obviously some nervousness. I think everybody experiences that for the first time when you go to a foreign country and you want to try out speaking their language. Yeah, you're going to be a wee bit nervous. There's nothing wrong with that. But the point I'm making is learning and studying German lexicography is not going to serve you unless you are able to hold a conversation with a German person in German. If that's not your goal, then why are you studying the lexicography? Why are you studying the root etymology of German language? To me, that makes no sense. Whereas if you're going to study music theory to that kind of level, it only has value if you put it into practice with either improvisation or with composition or, with music making in general. Now, I've spent a lot of time, because my passion is harmony, I've spent a lot of time working on chord changes and finding different ways to make chords work together, whether it's more traditional, whether it's that kind of very kind of straight ahead traditional harmony. Now that's all fairly straightforward, simple harmony, but my passion is for what if I go for chords that don't necessarily work in that way? So, for example, So that's kind of the more my kind of harmonic language, that it's kind of a little bit less traditional. So studying that kind of thing is great, provided you actually apply it to actual performing or improvisation. Because you can dive deep into improvisation, and you can start getting into chord tones, you can start getting into passing tones, you can start getting into chromatic enclosures, you can start getting into scales, modes, and you can end up overloading yourself with kind of, oh, I've got all of these hundreds of different scales, which ones do I pick? And you can become so overwhelmed that you actually don't really play anything, or you become too afraid of playing something because what scale, what mode do I pick when there are so many to choose from? How do I make sense of it all? How do I actually put it all into practice? So for as much as those kind of improvisational techniques like modes and chord tones and passing notes and chromatic enclosures and all of those things are important and they're useful to learn, here's the thing. You want to make music that says something, that doesn't sound like just a bunch of scales or a bunch of, techniques strung together. Kind of like what we talk about when we talk about people that say a lot of words, but they don't really say anything. People that it's either technobabble or it's word salad, or worse, it's both. So we want to avoid those things when we're improvising. I could spend all day doing this. I could do that for literally hours and hours and hours and hours on end. But really, how stimulated were you by that? None of that made any sense. It was just fireworks and it was just chops. It wasn't really anything that made any sense. Whereas, I could apply the same ideas and the same techniques and say something more profound musically, like. So, I was able to say a lot more and be a lot more musical that way. And yes, I did take the tempo down a wee bit. But, I could have done the same thing at the much higher tempo. It's important to make sure that you state things that make sense to your listener. And that's where, when we're talking about improvisation, we're talking about it being spontaneous composing. It's not just playing random notes at random times. It's not just about chance. It's not just about, playing any notes. It's not that. It is that, but it's also not that. It's both that and also making clear melodic statements that make sense to your audience. So I hope that this little discussion has been helpful. Ron says here, I'm talking about ways to generate motifs as a part of composing. Yes, certainly. So, motivic improvisation is very important. And the cool thing about motivic improvisation is that you can take those ideas and you can make them form the basis of a whole work, not just a spontaneous thing, but you can go, you know what, I like this particular melody that I've just made so much that I want to use it in a much stronger melodic statement. Maybe I will write it out, and I'll write it out for, a whole saxophone section to play together, or, a whole string section. And then I'll go, okay, so what if I take this idea, have it start with strings, and then have it finish with, flutes and piccolos and oboes, and then have the strings playing some long tones that are related to this melodic idea by way of supporting it and providing maybe a counter melody or providing some harmonic support for the second half of the melodic statement that you've just improvised with the woodwinds. So, you can codify it. You can take something that's spontaneous and you can codify it, and you can go, okay, so if I really like this idea, let's break it up into a couple of chunks, and then let's cascade this chunk around different parts of my orchestra or different parts of my ensemble that are going to be playing this piece. So there's different ways of approaching the same thing is what I'm trying to get at here. But yeah, that's cool. That's an important point there. Glenn Michael Thompson is here, and he says, I've been working on quartal harmony recently. Lots of chords to be discovered, especially getting into inversions which aren't just stacked fourths. Also gives ideas for single note lines. Yep, and a lot of what you just heard there was very much kind of quartal harmony, And like you say, you can kind of condense those. I mean, those are kind of open stacked fourths, but you can condense them down like this. Which is kind of a little bit more kind of Alan Holdsworth. Or you can really open them up and put a third on the top, which is where your so what chords come from. Or you can kind of make them kind of this kind of chord and then put the third underneath it. So yeah, there's lots that you can do with building things in fourths. Like fourths are a great way to do major seventh chords. You know, like most people when they play a major seventh chord, this is kind of what they think of. They kind of think of that, which is kind of like, that's kind of like your classic kind of Steely Dan peg kind of. You know, that's kind of your classic major 7 stack of fourths, major 7 stack of fourths kind of thing, which is a great use of quartal harmony, by the way. Another great use of quartal harmony by Steely Dan is Green Earrings. I've forgotten how that bass line goes. So yeah, it's another popular use of quartal harmony. Yeah, lots to be discovered, and like I said, you can turn those into major sevenths. Like if I take this stack of fourths here, G, C, F, put an A flat underneath that, you've got a nice A flat major 6 chord. Or you could put like, put this stack of fourths, put a D underneath it, you kind of get a suggested B flat over D. So yeah, plenty of harmonic ideas there. Right, let's see. Alfredo says, I'm not a Studio One Plus member, perhaps in the future. There you go. Yeah, Studio One Plus is a great place to you can collaborate with other people really easily using Studio One. And also it's a great place where there's a community section there, and people just, you know, people who are members, they tend to just hang out in there. And the cool thing about hanging out in community is you can post all of your works. So if you've got a piece that you're really proud of, or maybe a piece you would like somebody's feedback on, and you can just post it up there in the community and say, hey, I'm working on this at the moment. Tell me what you think. And you'll get a whole bunch of comments that are really helpful. And also you can say, hey, here's this kind of work in progress. I think it needs kind of like a lead guitar or something, but I'm not really a lead guitar player. And then, you know, somebody will comment and say, hey, I'd love to help you out with that. And right there, you've got the birth of a collaboration. And that's what Studio One Plus is all about. So it's well worth taking a look at. Let's go see what else we've got. Yeah, you guys are just chatting amongst yourselves, which is cool. All right, so we are over time. And Rock Tease is asking me to improvise in the Locrian Natural 6 scale, which is kind of what we've been using for our challenge. Which, by the way, is the Halloween challenge. If you're not familiar what that is, it's basically a challenge for composing a piece, and it's Halloween themed. It's all based around the Locrian natural sixth scale. What is that? Well, it's basically all the white notes from B to B, but instead of playing a G, you play a G sharp. So it's the only kind of black note in the whole thing, and it does sound weird. It sounds like this. Kind of has a little bit of a Middle Eastern kind of feel to it. But the idea is to write a piece of music that's at least 90 seconds long, maximum 5 minutes long. That's got a clear beginning, middle, and end. And you can be as creative as you want with this scale as the basis. So you can derive the melody, the chords, and the bass part from this scale. And the idea is that me and Rich Cresswell are the judges of this, and basically we want creativity and scariness. So scare us, be really, really creative, and have fun with it. And there is a prize up for grabs. The competition closes on October 27th, and then the finale of the competition will be on Sunday the 29th of October, and we will announce the winner then, but we will also be playing mine and Rich's top 5 or top 10 pieces. We'll be playing an excerpt from each of our favorite pieces from among those that are submitted. And the way you submit is by creating your work, uploading it to somewhere like SoundCloud, and then what you do is you go to the web address at the bottom of your screen, jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk, and you click on the Contact Us form, which you'll see is in the menu bar at the top of the web page. Click on that. A contact form will appear at the bottom, and then you just fill that out and put in the message there, a link to your SoundCloud where your song is. And then what Rich and I will do is we'll gather these all together, and we will pick our favorite ones, the ones that we think fulfill the brief I've just outlined the most, and scares us the most. And then a winner will be chosen. And then you'll be able to reach out to Rich Cresswell, who has very, very, very kindly and very, very generously sponsored this, and you'll be able to sort out the prize with him. So that's all pretty cool. He's put a link in there. He said there's a sendspace.com file there. If you go grab that, that's got all the details of the whole thing. And you can go grab that. You can open that up in Studio One. It gives you an instrument track that's got the scale on it and some suggested chords, and you can use that as a template. You can use that as a basis for your work. And that's it. That's all you need to do to enter the competition. And anybody can enter. And even if you've got 1 or more entries, that's cool. If you've got 5 or 6 different ideas, then that's also cool. And as Rich says here, he says it in all caps. He says, make it scary, weird, collapse time itself. Definitely. Absolutely. Alfredo says, do I have to have a SoundCloud account and be able to submit songs there to compete? You don't have to. It's just that SoundCloud is very easy, and you know what? Having a SoundCloud account is free. It doesn't cost you any money at all. You create your account and then you can upload it there, or you can do it via Dropbox. But the cool thing about SoundCloud is the reason why we're kind of preferring SoundCloud is the whole idea of this is to encourage you not just to enter a competition, but to publish your work. Get your music out there to the public. Get your music out there to the public. And, you know, that for me is the best way to be motivated to make music and to be motivated to create, is to have a deadline, have a focus, have a target, make yourself publicly accountable. I'm releasing this piece of music on the 27th of October. There it is. And then, you know, you can put it out to your public, and you can put it out and you can have your friends listen to it and everything else. Christopher had a question. He said, after the competition, can we hear all of the submissions? I think we would like to try and make that happen. Rich and I will discuss that and see if we can come up with a simple and easy way to make that happen. But fundamentally, you do not have to have a SoundCloud account. It's just easier if you do. But yeah, you can upload your song wherever you want, just so long as we get the link to download it, or the link to listen to it. So, I mean, that's why SoundCloud is easy, because we can just go follow your link and hit play. It's that easy. So there we go. All right. I think we'll call it there. So there's the meetup. I think there's a link to that meetup somewhere in the chat there. And that starts at 8 p.m. Central Time, which is in just about an hour, just under an hour. So about 50 minutes from now. And you can go all over there, and you can get involved in that. That would be cool. Rich says, I would like that. We could definitely do a Halloween listening party. Yes, for certain we could certainly do that. All right, folks, we'll call it there. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. We peaked at around about 20 viewers, which is nice. We don't tend to peak much more than that for a Songwriting Simplified show, so this has been pretty good. Thank you once again, Ron, for the great discussion point on improvisation. That was cool. And other than that, folks, we will see you on Sunday for Sunday Night Live, where the focus of that show is much more to do with Studio One and recording and mixing and mastering and performing using Studio One. And so your questions there don't need to be kind of songwriting focused. It's much more to do with actually using Studio One. All right, folks. So we will catch up with you on Sunday. Take care. Have a great rest of your week. Good night, everybody.